The city of Tulsa, Oklahoma recently held a vote to spend $2.5 million of public money on a building renovation. The building was going to be an IKEA. So why does a furniture store get treated like a highway? If you look at history, there's no reason cities should even be happy about having the big box retailers open up a location in their domain. The vote passed, and Tulsa wasn't doing anything unusual. Municipalities across the world have spent years competing to attract IKEA, bidding for it the way you'd bid for a rail terminal or a manufacturing plant. As we have a fairly good model for what happens. When a new Walmart opens in a town, the pattern is consistent enough that it has a name: the Walmart effect. Business closures on surrounding blocks increase. Within 15 months of a new Walmart opening, between 4 and 14 existing retail establishments close nearby. Local wages get pulled down because Walmart sets the floor for what an entry-level job pays in that area. Customers who used to spread across a dozen local shops funnel through one retailer instead. The research on this has been replicated across enough markets that economists treat it as a baseline for what big box retail does to a local economy. A giant foreign furniture chain arriving in your town looks like the same story. You'd have reasonable grounds to expect it. And for a specific slice of local businesses, the expectation holds. Furniture shops within a few kilometers of a new IKEA do lose revenue. That's documented. If you run an independent furniture store and an IKEA opens nearby, what follows is not good for you. But IKEA is a destination, and destinations work differently from convenience retail. When you go to Walmart, you go because you need something that week. That trip takes 20 minutes, and you do it twice a week. IKEA doesn't work like that. The average visit runs around 3 hours. People plan the trip days in advance. They drive an hour to get there, usually with the whole household along. That's an event. And events do something that local convenience retail can't. They pull customers in from outside the area. The people arriving at a new IKEA aren't being redirected from the furniture shop down the road. Most of them drove past that shop from 40 minutes away. They wouldn't have been in that part of town at all if IKEA hadn't given them a reason. The restaurants and other businesses near that IKEA are seeing foot traffic that simply wouldn't have existed otherwise. There's a second part to this. IKEA rarely shows up alone. Researchers studying 5 separate IKEA openings across Sweden found that each store arrived surrounded by multiple co-tenant businesses, all positioned near a major highway with enough parking spaces. From there, IKEA proceeds to build a commercial area on top of what already existed, with highway access and a cluster of other retailers set up to benefit from the same foot traffic it generates. It even builds that area on land nobody else wanted. IKEA's site selection has consistently pointed towards the cheap fringes of cities, former industrial zones, depressed suburban edges that the other developers passed on, a former landfill in Sydney, an empty department store in Tulsa, the places that needed something to happen before anything else would follow. These sites typically sit in municipal records for years, producing almost nothing. A derelict industrial plot generates no property tax, little employment, no commercial activity. Local governments know the land is there. They often can't move it. When IKEA commits to a site like that, it's providing the condition that makes subsequent development possible. Retailers that wouldn't consider the location independently will follow an IKEA anchor. And that impact goes beyond retail. Just wait until you see what the arrival of a furniture store actually does to the value of the houses around it. Sweden's Institute of Retail Economics tracked over 13,000 property transactions across 5 cities that got an IKEA between 2005 and 2014. The average effect on house prices across those cities? Up 4.2%. On an average home at the time, that's around $6,000 of value added. But the average masks the more interesting finding. The houses closest to the new store, within a kilometer, saw no significant change in value at all. The noise and disruption of sitting beside a large retail site cancel out the convenience at close range. Living next door to an IKEA turns out to be about as appealing as living next door to any other large commercial site. Which is to say, not particularly. Move out to a kilometer and a half, and the picture changes. The disruption fades, and the benefit holds. The neighborhood has access to a large retail cluster and the restaurants and services that follow foot traffic into the area without the noise of sitting directly beside it. House prices there rose by an average of 6.55%. At 2 kilometers, the peak, the effect reaches 6.65%, then it begins to taper. At 5 kilometers, still 4%. At 10 kilometers, about 2%. The effect doesn't disappear at the edge of the retail zone. In every city they studied, the positive signal was still measurable at the furthest point in their sample. The researchers flagged this directly. Unlike Walmart, whose property value effects are highly localized and fade within a mile or two of the store, IKEA's effects reach across the whole city. The reason is the same destination mechanic from before. A store that draws shoppers from 40 minutes away has a market reach that extends 40 minutes in every direction. And that reach makes the entire city more attractive to live in, not just the neighborhood beside the car park. That's what city governments are reading when they treat an IKEA opening as an economic event. House values rising across the city means a broader tax base and more development following in behind. The property data is one part of it. The same research group looked at what happened to retail revenues and employment in the municipalities that got an IKEA. Durable goods sales in those cities rose by about 20% after opening. Employment went up by approximately 17%. Both figures include IKEA's own operations. Disentangling IKEA's direct contribution from the broader effect is genuinely difficult, but the direction is clear. Within a kilometer of the store, businesses that aren't competing directly with IKEA on furniture see revenues rise by about 7%. The foot traffic those businesses are capturing is new to the area, not redirected from somewhere else. All of which raises a question the data alone doesn't answer. IKEA is a private company with a number of operating companies. None of this is charity. So why does its business model produce these effects, and why would it organize itself in a way that happens to leave cities measurably better off? The answer is that it doesn't organize itself to leave cities better off. The business model that produces those effects was designed entirely around keeping costs down, and the cost reductions are embedded in nearly every part of how IKEA operates. Start with the product. Furniture is heavy, and shipping assembled furniture across a country is expensive. Flat Pack solves that. The customer handles final assembly, which is labor IKEA doesn't pay for. They also handle transport from store to home in their own car, which eliminates last-mile delivery costs. And because flat pack items are dense and rectangular, they move more efficiently from factory to warehouse, and the cost saving at each stage compounds. Then there's the land. If you need a warehouse large enough to hold 100,000 individual products, you don't build it on prime real estate. You build it at the cheap edge of the city, on a former industrial site or a patch of land nobody else had found a use for. The land costs a fraction of what it would anywhere central. Sometimes the municipality is actively pitching the site to IKEA because the alternative is a decade of vacancy. Those two decisions created something IKEA didn't design for. A store people drive 40 minutes to reach in a location that was almost free to acquire. It doesn't have anything to do with local restaurants directly. The 3-hour visit was designed to maximize the chance you add a lamp and a set of kitchen tongs to a basket that started with a bookcase. There's one intended path through every department. The restaurant exists to prevent hunger from cutting the visit short. The ball pit exists to prevent children from cutting the visit short. The whole community benefit is a byproduct. But the same Swedish research that documents rising property values and retail revenue gains across cities also shows furniture stores within 2 to 5 kilometers of a new IKEA losing revenue. The effect is in the same data set. Independent furniture retailers in that zone see business shrink after an opening. Not all of them fail, but enough that the pattern holds consistently across the 5 cities studied. The real question is if that is necessarily a bad thing. A high-end or specialist shop, bespoke joinery, designer pieces, can put some distance between itself and IKEA on quality or customization. The customer bases don't fully overlap, and the price points make direct comparisons difficult. That distinction could be beneficial. But a general mid-market furniture retailer selling similar products in the same price range has very little room to move. IKEA's pricing reflects a supply chain built over decades at a scale no independent retailer can reach. Its range covers product categories that would take multiple specialist stores to match. And the store itself, the day-out model, the restaurant, the layout design to keep you inside, creates a retail experience that has no independent equivalent. You can attempt to match the product, you cannot match the visit. IKEA is just offering something independent furniture retailers can't structurally replicate, a shopping trip that takes most of the day, with food, fun, and parking built in. The broader city tends to benefit, and direct competitors tend to lose. Both are true at the same time, and the second one doesn't appear in the press release when a city announces it's getting a store. What shifts the story is that IKEA has spent the last decade turning that location pattern into something new. In 2019, IKEA's parent company, Inca Group, paid 170 million euros for a former industrial site in Stratford, East London. The site is called Strand East. The plan is expanding beyond a store and a car park. Vistant, the real estate arm of the group, is developing 1,200 homes on the site alongside offices and community space, with a new IKEA store as the anchor. A former brownfield from the industrial era being turned into a self-contained neighborhood. The IKEA store is the anchor tenant in a development IKEA itself owns. This is the same pattern IKEA stores have always produced accidentally, except now Inca owns the land and homes when it starts to rise. The economic benefit that used to leak into the surrounding area is being partially captured by the developer. The model changed. Strand East isn't isolated. Inca Centers operates large mixed-use shopping centers across Europe and Asia under the Live It brand, where IKEA functions as the anchor for developments the company builds and manages outright. The same real estate arm has been acquiring city center sites across multiple markets, backing IKEA's move away from highway edge locations towards smaller stores embedded in high-density urban areas. The London Oxford Street store that opened in 2025 occupies a former department store building in the middle of one of the highest footfall retail streets in Europe, with no car park and none of the retail district that surrounds a traditional IKEA site. The through line is consistent. IKEA identifies land that is underperforming relative to its potential and activates it, whether that's a derelict industrial site in East London or an empty department store in Oxford Street. The furniture retail operation is the mechanism. The real estate position is the asset. What city governments are now dealing with is something completely different. It's a furniture store, it's a restaurant, it's a property developer with a 40-year track record of activating dead urban land all at once. But most importantly, it is one that intends to capture the value it creates rather than letting it disperse into the surrounding neighborhood. That changes what the $2.5 million Tulsa put into that building renovation actually bought. That did not stop at just a furniture store. If house prices in Tulsa followed the pattern documented in the Swedish research, rising an average of 4.2% across the city, the property tax base shifts for years. Retail sales tax revenue rises alongside the documented 20% increase in durable goods spending. Neither of those numbers arrives in a lump sum. They accumulate quietly, spread across thousands of transactions and property assessments, for as long as the store draws people to that part of Tulsa. That's why a furniture store gets treated like a highway. A city puts public money in at the front, and the tax base quietly expands for a decade. That's the same return profile as a transit link or a road, even if the mechanism is completely different. The variable that's changed is who's on the other side of that deal. The cities that hosted IKEA for the last 4 decades were negotiating with a furniture retailer. The cities negotiating now are dealing with a company that has watched what its stores do to land values for 40 years and decided it wants a share of that too. Then again, the taxes on those properties and sales any new retail generates still goes to the government. In the end, it seems like a win-win situation.